So yeah, we'll move on to a little bit more of the Premier League and talk about the Premier League sack race. Is the grabby headline we have for you here on YouTube, but I think this is more to talk about a couple of clubs in particular that are under pressure, and particularly Steven Gerrard, Sean, and Aston Villa. And look, there were serious rumours. I saw a great tweet saying, "Geez, if you believed everything Steven Gerrard got in the fight last night and all this, and there was massive rows, and he's been sacked and he's been back." But the reality is, I don't think he'll be sacked this week, just based on maybe the last 24 hours. But this is all ever changing. What are your thoughts on what he's been doing? Because in fairness to Villa and Steven Gerrard, while I personally don't see, and I have said it on the podcast, a future for him, his two best performances this season have come at home to Manchester City and at home to Chelsea side, who I thought, from watching bits of it and then catching the full highlight show, I thought Chelsea were pretty decent, yet Villa still managed to create those chances. And in another day, they get that equaliser and who knows what happens.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Gerrard, Hasenhüttl, Rodgers at the moment, and there's other managers there. It does feel like something's going to give to one of them soon. Look, from what I saw, because obviously I went to watch the Arsenal game and it got delayed, so I watched a good bit of the first half, and Villa were already 1 down, but they were outstanding. Just couldn't score. Kepa made a couple of brilliant saves, and again, what a return to action for him at Chelsea.
Can I just get my little I've been banging the Mendy's not good enough, and the first thing Tuchel will do in the summer is upgrade the goalkeeper, and the first thing Graham Potter's done is not upgrade the keeper but just put in Kepa. But time will tell whether Kepa's good enough. But I think when Mendy's representatives were looking for a new contract a couple of weeks before Tuchel got sacked, I think they knew as much as I did that he's just not quite at the level to play football the way a Chelsea side should be able to if they want to win the league.
Yeah, and as I said, Villa forced him into making a lot of good saves, and Villa kind of, it's hard with Gerrard because a lot of their fans are giving out saying they don't have a style of play. But if you were to say something about Villa, is in that first half they kept the intensity on Chelsea. They sustained pressure on them. Just couldn't find a goal. They should have found one. McGinn had the chance when he could have squared it to Danny Ings. Then there was the double save. And look, if you're Villa, you're very disappointed not to get something. I know the Villa fans weren't happy after the game. Gerrard didn't acknowledge the fans, and small little things like that just show you all's not well. Then you have Southampton at the moment, and they just feel like they're meandering along. They're kind of waiting for something to happen. Hasenhüttl he's quite a likable character. There's all that stuff in lockdown of him making dossiers about this the way to play, and Southampton are kind of trying to build up through their academy this identity of playing. But they have a really young squad, they have a really young defence. They seem to be kind of, as I say, meandering along. And as for Leicester, just missing Maddison now in midweek with his 5th yellow card. Vardy just seems to be really off the pace. And
Just on Maddison, I thought that was idiotic. Not just because he's in my fantasy team and going into the game I knew a yellow card would do it. I mean, there's a way to dive like Harry Kane does, and everyone gives out about Harry Kane, but he maneuvers the contact. Like, that was just so naive from Maddison, wasn't it?
Yeah, and look, fair play. I can't remember who was ref, but I was actually watching the game live when it happened, and straight away it felt like a penalty. It felt straight away like, whether it was a full dive or there's little to none contact, it was the right decision anyway. Look, he's such an important player for them, and as a manager, when things aren't going your way, things like that happen. Well, for Stray, Brendan Rodgers, they've kept a couple of clean sheets now. That the Forest game, they kept a clean sheet just about now, and they kept one obviously against Palace, but they couldn't capitalise, and they're still rooted down near the bottom. And obviously, you'd have Steve Cooper naturally on this list of managers under pressure. But, the big contract he got last week, which I thought was the right decision, because if you are to stick behind a manager, you gotta, I suppose, support him in his down moments. And Nottingham Forest,
it should have been given in the summer though, shouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Look, you got to remember the job he did last year with Forest. They were a club just absolutely going nowhere in the Championship, almost like, and it's a funny one because you get to a stage where you look at Ipswich. Ipswich very similar to the position Forest were when Steve Cooper took over. So Mick McCarthy managing Ipswich kind of got them oftentimes to the playoffs. They had a bad playoff semi-final defeat to Norwich around 2015, I'd say. Then obviously he gets sacked a couple of years later all of a sudden the new manager comes in, and then Norwich's the biggest rivals, Norwich's ex-manager Paul Lambert comes in to save the day, keep them up in the championship. They get relegated down to League One. Then they're down there for a couple of years, and all of a sudden, from being a mediocre mid-table championship side, they were down plummeted then to League One. There's huge issues with Marcus Evans, their owner. They're actually kind of building something at the minute. Kieran McKenna, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as assistants there now, but that's where Forest were. They were kind of they were doing nothing in the championship. So the job Steve Cooper has done is there's a reason why the Nottingham Forest fans love him. I was surprised, to be honest, when he got the big deal from the owner, because the owner seems to be really ambitious. Obviously, 22 players come in, over 100 million spent.
It's important to note that they sacked the recruitment team as well.
Yeah, and they have a really young CEO, Dane Murray, I think, and a new technical director, so that they are kind of trying to build some. I think they're very confident they'll stay up. I watched that Wolves Nottingham game. There was very little in the game. It was 2 penalties, a really poor penalty by Brennan Johnson. And that's the one thing I would say Forest maybe do lack, and maybe Dennis can step into those shoes. But I think their number 9, the striker they signed, Adedowane, I think his name is. I think I got that wrong. But he scored obviously at the start of the season. I think it was against West Ham. But I still think they kind of lack a big presence at number 9. You think of what Kiefer Moore can often give Bournemouth. You look at some of the other teams. Look at the Samaka. I know West Ham spent big money on it, but he looks a real presence. I just think Forest are missing that at the moment.
Incidentally, they're 0-0 half-time away to Brighton, which is, we're recording this 8:20 on Tuesday, but just to let the listeners know there. However, I finished up 0-0 at half-time. I haven't seen any of it, but just FYI.
Yeah, and as I said, they'll be really disappointed they didn't get something at Wolves. Two kind of poor enough penalties. There was nothing in the game. Wolves has historically been a difficult place to go, but Wolves obviously under Steve Davis, the caretaker manager. I think Steve Cooper, his demeanour on the sideline felt like it was a missed opportunity. But you look at Hasenhüttl, Gerrard, Rodgers, they're under big pressure. Look, I was actually looking at it. So before the show, Lodge, Parker, and Tuchel, 3 managers already sacked. They're all kind of, they weren't guarantees for the sack either. You look at Thomas Tuchel, I think no one was really expecting it. Maybe there was a little bit of whispers. Scott Parker, obviously off the back of the 9-0, but it was more his antics in the press and obviously a bit of discourse. The Bruno Lage one, yes, Wolves haven't been playing well, but they just spent an awful lot of money in the summer and tried to change from a back 5 to a back 4 now. And they've brought players in to play the back 4, and they've lost their Bolly and Cody and Duncan and guys that were staple at their back 5 before. So that just, and the fact that Wolves haven't appointed anyone also feels like a bit of a silly decision.
It's a nonsense, Sean, isn't it, that you can sack someone without a replacement? I know it's not the nicest thing in the world to be approaching managers before you sack, but at least have a plan in place. It reminds me of Spurs looking for that manager when they ended up signing Nuno, and look how badly that finished. So, and incidentally and coincidentally, Nuno was linked, and I don't think he is getting the Wolves job anymore.
Now, I know Rodgers was different when he took over at Leicester, and this is his second contract he's on. But you look at the payout he's reportedly lying to get when it does happen. When you go like that to a manager and you had appointed one in a couple of weeks, and there's a couple of games go by, the manager that comes in is going to go, well, look, they have you where they want you. They're going to say, well, I want all this money and this and this. Similar situation to Celtic in the summer before they got Ange Postecoglou. Every manager under the sun was linked, and then they absolutely hit gold with Postecoglou.
Stumbled, similar to Arsenal and Wenger, I guess.
And I was looking at the championship. So there's 3 clubs currently without managers. West Bromwich Albion, who've just sacked Steve Bruce. I don't know how they only just sacked him. They're in 20th. 21st are Hull, with new Turkish owners, brought a Turkish manager in during the summer, just all over the place.
Yeah, and just tell the listeners they sacked their manager after an international break on the Friday morning when they had a game the Friday night.
8 hours, yeah, so exactly that. 8 hours before they were due to play on the Monday. The Friday night it was against Luton, and it was the game. Lansbury scored a brilliant goal, I think, and they sacked him off the, not waiting for the international break. And and they sacked him 8 hours before the Friday night game, which was interesting. They're in 21st, and the team in 22nd, Middlesbrough, are without a manager. So the 3 teams just above in and around the drop zone at the minute are without managers. Middlesbrough, a big link with Michael Carrick, but teams who've had managerial changes: West Brom, Middlesbrough in the Championship, West Brom, Middlesbrough, Hull, Watford, Cardiff, Huddersfield, and Stoke. And then obviously Sunderland and Rotherham have both lost managers as well, but they've moved to different clubs. So it's crazy what is going on in the managerial game. Also, like to look closer to home, Bowes obviously sack Keith Long, bring in Derek Pender, who's known in the club, huge legend in the club, obviously takes over as caretaker manager, and then it just feels like they've gone looking for everyone before they've stumbled on Declan Devine, who is an really interesting character. Obviously managed Derry. He's been involved in teams with Northern Ireland as well in the past, I think, underage as well. But also like them, like if you sack a manager, especially someone like Keith Long who's been there an awful long time, you kind of want to be sounding out a replacement for him. And similar in the Premier League, in the Championship with Wolves, with Middlesbrough, who Wilder's been gone quite a while now. So it's just these. You wonder what these clubs are doing in the background. Like, why aren't they ready for this? But it's again, it was similar when Arsenal sacked Unai Emery. They had Freddie Ljungberg in charge for a few games, and just and the worst thing, that the one with Arsenal was that everyone knew Unai Emery was coming to the end. We just had the Crystal Palace incident with Xhaka. Arsenal were getting battered by every team we played, and eventually after Europa League game, they sacked him, but they didn't really have it. Then they started their interviews then, kind of like as if, oh well, we've sacked him now. Like who's going to go in?
Yeah, well, that's tomorrow morning's issue. Yeah, no, it's crazy. There's no foresight. And some clubs like you quickly on Michael Carrick. Like if they had Middlesbrough from the word go, it said Michael Carrick, you're our man. You kind of understand it a little bit, but like it almost like there's a week or two gone by now. It's Michael Carrick talk, so it's definitely an afterthought. Like whether he'll be good or not remains to be seen.
Yeah, and I kind of like that appointment. I think he'd be pretty good. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's from somewhere up around there. Could be wrong on that, but also the longest serving manager in the Championship is Mark Robbins, who's been there, I think, since 2017. Coventry are now bottom of the Championship, so the job he's done is unquestionable. He's been brilliant. Been disappointed this year. They've drawn quite a few games, I think. So we could easily have another name added to this list. So it's just bonkers in the Championship. The Premier League is getting to that stage now where you think managers are going to be sacked. You think of those 3, Rodgers, Hasenhüttl, and Gerrard. You think could well be gone. Those 3 managers wouldn't surprise me if they're gone in the next 10 days or so.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of midweek prem for those listening. This one could have already got the bullet there, but yeah, that's interesting thoughts there regarding Premier League and a little insight into the Championship there, which is genuinely lives up to being the craziest and best league in the world. I think if you haven't been on Twitter, you wouldn't have seen those crazy stats of how teams are somewhere. And can you run through that in about 10 seconds, Sean? Like, Burnley have like done this and they're first or whatever.
Well, Michael Carrick actually is from up the northeast as well, which I'll take. But there's 5 teams. I think the top 5 teams in the Championships are separated by 1 point. Burnley, Sheffield United are both the top 2. Then you got Blackburn under their new manager. Obviously, Tony Mowbray was relinquished of his duties in the summer. He's with Sunderland now, but the new manager, Dal Thompson, seems to be doing a pretty good job. And Michael Beale, who was Gerrard's number 2 at Rangers and Villa, credited with a lot of Gerrard's success at Rangers.
Yes.
He's flying with QPR. And it's funny because I was at the QPR Derby game last year when Derby got relegated. I was in the away end with the Derby fans, but there just seemed like there was something at QPR, like there was something that you could kind of see that there was a bit of a feel-good factor there. Jimmy Dunn at the back. Ireland, Jimmy Dunn was fantastic. But Elias Chair really caught my eye, and he played. They played Redden on TV a couple of weeks ago, and he's a really impressive player for Moroccan number 10 kind of style of player. Really similar to Ben Rama. That kind of influence that Ben Rama had in the Brentford team, similar to QPR, and they seem to be going along nicely. Paul Ince is up with Reading, with Andy Carroll up front wearing number 2. kind
Yeah,
of.
that pisses me
Tom
off.
Ince, Tom Ince is playing as well. And one thing, Watford. I watched Watford on Friday night.
I know what you're going to say. They were unbelievable.
Yeah, and it was. I must say, there's two things. I thought Mick McCarthy was outstanding on commentary.
And sorry, I couldn't cross you again, Sean. But the three in the boot, I loved it.
Andy Hinchcliffe and Mick McCarthy. I thought, Mick just I think what he's so good as a commentator, because he can see what a manager sees. So he's saying, look, they're just getting. There was a passage of play where for 5 minutes, Watford just kept a couple of passes straight to Ismail Sarr on the left wing, and Mick McCarthy was going, look, there's no two ways about trying to get them to Sarr, and Sarr's going to run at Max Ernst. But where football has gone through the roof in 10 years, like to have a player like Ismail Sarr playing in the Championship is like a cheat code. And the thing with him is he turns it on. He's one of those players, like if he was in any way consistent, he'd be long gone out of there. But he produced two moments of quality. One was the ball in for the Watford first goal, and then the second goal was just an outrageous bit of skill and ability to beat Aarons and get the ball across. And Watford, I think, appointed very shrewdly in Slaven Bilic. I think that's a really good appointment, and I think they're going to be the team that just finds a bit of form, goes mouldering. You'd be questioning about them slightly at the back, but going forward with Keenan Davis as well, obviously Forrest is number 9 last year. I think that they'll go an awful long way. But Norwich came back into that game. Amadama Belli came off injured right at the end, which is a bit of a worry, but he looks like he's slowly getting back up to the pace. And obviously Adam Ida is still injured, and you'd be really worried, because as a young player, if you're getting injuries consistently like that, it's not good going forward.
Yeah, Watford only 5 points off the league. I definitely think they'd be a dark horse, if that's the right description, to win it, let alone get promoted. So definitely could be right up there in the top of the market.